If you want dinner, lick it off the floor. That is what my son-in-law told me as he threw my plate to the ground. I stood up, adjusted my jacket, and whispered 3 words that left him pale. Before I begin, let me know in the comments where you are watching my story from, so I can see how far it has traveled. My name is Arthur Robinson. I am 72 years old, and I have been a widower for 4 years. Although I officially retired as an Army intelligence analyst, the mind never really retires. In the service, you learn that silence sees more than screaming, and that men who think they have power usually look down on others until they trip. My daughter Emily is the only thing that ties me to what is left of my family. That is why when she called me on a Tuesday afternoon with that tired joy, only those who work double to receive half the affection have I accepted without thinking. Dad, she said Michael got the promotion at the firm. They are going to name him junior partner. On Saturday at 7, we are hosting a dinner at the house. Are you coming? I should have smelled the trap, the way I smell rain even when the sky is blue. I had spent years swallowing dinners where I felt like an unwanted guest among my own blood. But for us old folks who love, truly pride softens with a single word. I ironed my best shirt, polished my shoes, and chose a bottle of Pinot from a local vineyard that Emily has always liked. She prefers local stuff to any foreign label. I drove half an hour to her house in the hills, that cold complex of glass and concrete where everything echoes with borrowed success. The house screams Michael everywhere. Zero warmth, minimalist, furniture, abstract art that says nothing, and marble so polished you hesitate to set down a glass. Before him, Emily used to fill her spaces with knitted blankets, flower pots on the balcony, and photos stuck with magnets from markets and fairs. Now those photos survive on a shelf at the end of the hallway, almost hidden, as if he had dictated that memories are in the way. He opened the door with his billboard smile. I know it well. He uses it when he needs to seem nice without showing his boredom. Mr. Robinson punctual like a good soldier. Come in, come in. He always calls me Mr. Robinson. Never Dad, and certainly not Arthur, which I do not expect at my age but would appreciate. The table was set for 8 colleagues from Michael's firm, a couple I saw at the wedding, and Jessica, a friend of Emily, who tries to fill silences as if she were paid by the word. Emily came out of the kitchen in a dress I did not recognize pretty, but dim like a light bulb missing current. She gave me a kiss. It is so good you came, Dad. I took my assigned seat the furthest from Michael, pressed between the wall and Jessica. Michael, glass in hand, was already putting on his show. Partner at 37, he boasted, the youngest in the firm's history. Those late nights really pay off. We ate rare seafood with unpronounceable names. Seafood sits heavy with Emily, but no one remembered that. I chewed slowly. Michael has the virtue of turning any living room into a museum where you feel like an exhibit, not a guest. As soon as there was a gap in the conversation, he fired. So tell us, Mr. Robinson, how is retired life? Lots of dominoes and soap operas. It was not a question, it was a trap. He wanted me to make myself small. I smiled with barely moving lips. I keep active. A lawyer with kind eyebrows seemed interested. What do you do to keep busy? Michael let out a laugh like someone dropping a hammer. Do not be modest, sir. He is an expert on supermarkets, discount hours, and waiting at the clinic. The table went silent. Just kidding, he added with that polished irony that cuts deeper than an insult. There is trust with the father-in-law, right? Emily blushed but said nothing. She learned to live with those knives wrapped in cellophane. Humiliation tastes like iron on the tongue, and I know mine by memory. I stayed calm. Dessert arrived. Cheesecake, the Robinson family favorite. Emily baked it with her mother's recipe, the same one I recite in a low voice when I miss my wife. I took a spoonful. Then Michael, performing his scene, told an impossible case story, and with the gesture of someone signing a sentence, he hit my forearm. The plate flew, and the cake smashed against the floor like a kite without a string. There were gasps, napkins hurried hands. Michael, however, remained seated, savoring the moment. "Oops," he said, soaking every syllable in fake pity. "What a mess, Mr. Robinson." He raised his glass in a mocking toast. "If you want to finish your dinner, just lick it off the floor." That phrase, "lick it off the floor," crossed me like a bullet finding its target. Jessica murmured Michael, but I only heard the void where my daughter's voice should have been. Silence hurts more when it is kept by those who love you. I stood up slowly. At 72 bones protest, but they also know how to obey. I smoothed my jacket and tightened my gaze. Everyone was looking at me. I leaned toward Michael just enough so only he could hear me, without giving him a show. 3 words, nothing more. I know everything. The blood drained from his face as if someone had flipped a switch. He opened his mouth without finding air. I stood up straight, again nodded to those present, and walked toward the exit. My hands did not shake. Nothing shook. Sometimes dignity is heavy, but that weight straightens you out. That night, back in my apartment in Queens, I poured myself a black coffee. Old men should not drink coffee at night, but some nights demand bitter clarity. From the window I saw the city lights turning off and on as if a child were playing with the switchboard. I thought of my wife and how she would have asked me to protect Emily without losing myself. I also thought, I will not deny it, about what I would do the next morning. And yes, it would be worse. Worse for him, better for my daughter. Because you see, 3 weeks before that dinner, I had already seen what I should not have seen. I did not look for it. It appeared to me like a plague appears when you do not name it. Emily had called me desperate on a Thursday in September, saying the contractor was coming to fix a leak in the guest bathroom. She was flying to Chicago for a presentation and asked if I could keep an eye on the house because Michael would be in court all day. Of course, honey, I told her. I never fail when it comes to Emily. I arrived at 2. The contractor was arriving at 3:30. I sat in the living room to read. Without Michael, the house has a clinical peace. At 2:20, I heard the lock. I thought it was him. I said hello, out loud. No one answered. I heard 2 voices, his and a younger one with a southern accent. "Are you sure she is not coming back?" asked the woman. "Not until tomorrow night," replied Michael with a tone I have never heard him use for my daughter. "They load her with meetings in Chicago until late. She is going to stay there." My soldier's mind wanted to look for alibis, colleague meeting, legal strategy. But my old man's ear, which has heard confessions without words, told me something else. Intimacy. They were walking toward the living room. I had seconds. Announcing myself would be staging a useless embarrassment. Slipping away was the only sensible option. I stuck myself in the hollow the armchair makes with the curtain, that blind spot, where not even the best scout sees you at first glance. "I missed you," said the voice. Kisses, long ones, carnal ones. "Me too, my queen," he said. "Just a little longer, I swear, and we start properly." "What about Emily?" I told you. I will talk to her. Right now, she is super busy. I cannot risk her making a drama and losing an account. You know how she gets when she is stressed. The coldness of that phrase frosted my stomach. My daughter converted into a risk variable. The woman hesitated. "Michael, sometimes I feel like you are stringing me along." "Look at me, Amanda," he said. "I have loved you since I saw you at that conference. The thing with Emily ended years ago. We just share a mortgage. That is all." Amanda. I stored the name like you store evidence plates until you build a case, without noise, without haste. They went up the stairs amidst wet laughter. The rest I heard without wanting to. Footsteps, doors, the murmur of a shower. I waited 10 minutes, went out through the kitchen, and left through the garden without slamming the door. In the car, I stayed 20 minutes gripping the steering wheel, letting my heart slow down to a human rhythm. Calling Emily was my first impulse. Staying silent was my decision. Not out of cowardice, but out of tactics. In my trade, I learned that truth without proof becomes an argument. And I do not argue when it comes to protecting my own. The contractor never arrived. When Emily called at night, I told her everything was fine. It was the first lie I told my daughter in 72 years, and it tasted like metal. From that day on, I looked at Michael differently. The cruel jokes about my retirement days became clues. Why does he need to belittle me? Because he smells that I do not buy his act. I also knew that Emily was living in half-light, cooking his favorite meals, organizing romantic nights that he canceled with firm or golf excuses, and then she blamed herself for working too much. How easy it is to break someone who always wants to fix things. I carried all that in my bag when he told me about the floor. That is why I did not scream. That is why I did not cry. That is why I brought my mouth close to his ear and dropped. I know everything, like someone pulling the pin on a grenade and leaving it on the table. It was not a hollow threat. It was an inventory. On the way out, one of his colleagues tried to catch up to give me a napkin, a borrowed apology. I did not take it. I preferred the freezing air of the hills and the milky hum of the cars. Driving at night in this city requires more faith than reflexes. I arrived home with cold knuckles and a hot plan. On the table, I put the wine unopened. I did not want to leave it there. I took off my jacket and took my hardcover notebook out of the drawer, the one I have not left since the 80s. I wrote, Saturday 7th, 52 p.m. The Hills. Michael loses color with, I know everything, period. I underlined it. Below another line, Monday step 2. I am not going to pretend I slept perfectly, but I slept. At my age, sleep is more honest. If you earn it, it comes. And I earned it. Not by being brave, but by being an old man who has seen enough men like Michael to know that they all look alike. Where it matters, they believe no one is watching. I did watch, and the next day I would act. For some, that will sound worse. For me, it was simple justice. Not the justice of the courts downtown, the justice of a father who still knows how to aim and hit. At dawn on Sunday, I opened my eyes with a sharpness I had not felt since my years in the barracks. Clarity comes to you like a report concise without ornaments. I made a pot of coffee, poured myself a cup in my chipped mug, and dialed the number of Thomas Miller, the hawk and intelligence buddy from the 80s, now a private investigator with an office in the industrial district and the gaze of an old eagle. Colonel, he calls me that out of stubbornness, although I never went past major. Did you decide already? It is decided, Thomas. I need a fine job, clean legal, no clowning around, political family or business family. That became business. My son-in-law. Short silence of respect. Men who have smelled gunpowder understand that family is the most sensitive front. I will see you today 12 sharp at the diner on Main Street. Bring only what you want to exist. I hung up. I showered in cold water so my body would remember to obey. I checked my notebook, noted the essentials, put a copy of the Hills house key in my briefcase, the one Emily gave me, and went out to the street. Queens smells like bread early in the morning. The city is an animal waking up stretching avenues. Thomas was waiting for me with his back to the window, a tactical spot. Same mustache, same scar on the left eyebrow. Eyes that have not learned to trust. You look upright, Arthur, he said, shaking my hand. And upright is how one must walk when the ground is swampy. I ordered a black coffee. Thomas took out a small notebook, the other half of our memory. Tell me about the subject. Michael Stevens, corporate lawyer, 37, office downtown, lives with my daughter in the hills. He has, I said the word, without ornaments, like cutting a dry branch, a mistress. Her name is Amanda. I do not know her last name. He met her at a conference, 8 months, at least. Proof ears, sight. I was in the house when they entered. I heard names, promises, plans. He nodded without morbid curiosity. Objective truth with papers. Timeline, expenses, hotels, restaurants, trips, whatever is traceable. If there is a new company addresses partners. Nothing outside the law. I do not want this to come back to me on procedure. I do not get dirty, you know me. Do you want confrontation or armor for Emily? If she decides to confront, let it be with an advantage. Thomas wrote down names. He asked for descriptions, car brands, restaurants they frequent. I told him about the tone Michael uses to call everything business, even affection. I explained Emily's temperament, her easy guilt, her discipline that sometimes becomes a whip. I start tomorrow. First cut in a week. If something urgent jumps out, I will call you immediately. And listen. No amateur. Following, no inventing. You observe from the sidelines, understood, understood. We paid in cash, as the custom of paranoid old men dictates, and I left with the midday sun hitting my forehead. On the way home, I stopped at a stationery store, bought manila envelopes and labels. I am not one of those who keep everything in the cloud. Anyone can move the cloud with a click paper, looks you in the eyes. The following days were of monastic routine, walking early in the park, stretching knees, returning to organize my table, making inventories of memories that could become evidence printed. Messages Emily had shown me once with pride, saying, "Mike, I left your lunch in the fridge." Old photos that located places and dates receipts I kept without knowing why. I did not call Emily. I did not look for her. I repeated a mantra my wife taught me help without invading. I preferred her daily life to remain intact, while mine was sharpened like a knife. On Wednesday, Thomas called. I have 2 leads. One, the Amanda, is named Reynolds, paralegal, 28, works at a smaller firm behind the square. She was seen with your son-in-law at a corporate litigation conference in Vegas 8 months ago. Photo on third-party social media, I already downloaded. 2, there are expenses that do not square with the life of a dutiful husband. How much money? $15,000 in 2 months. Just in hospitality, big-ticket restaurants, hotels with check-ins that coincide with your daughter's trips, jewelry, all with cards in his name. And there are transfers going out of a joint account to a new card also his. The bile rose in me, but I breathed through my nose like when you wait for the adversary to reveal himself. Companies I am on that. An LLC appeared from 3 months ago. Summit Consulting LLC Partners. Michael Stevens and Amanda Reynolds. Fiscal address and apartment on the south side. I will send you scans later. All public nothing that compromises us. I remained mute for a second, not out of surprise, but out of the exactness with which rot organizes itself when it thinks it is unpunished. Thanks, Thomas. Keep going. I hung up and poured water. In the kitchen mirror was a 72-year-old man who, despite the wrinkles, has eyes firmer than when he was 30. I opened an envelope and wrote, Summit Consulting LLC /Southside /Partners Michael and Amanda /date. I stuck the label like someone christening a file. On Friday we met at a diner where the stew covers any tear. Thomas put a thin, well-assembled folder on the table. Timeline preliminary. Look March 12th. Dinner at Rosetta 2 Diners, $400 charged to your son-in-law's card. March 19th. Yacht Center. Double room check-in. 8:17 checkout. 6:52. Your daughter that weekend was in Chicago. I corroborated it with a story her friend Jessica uploaded. April 6th. Burger jewelry purchase for $5,000. There is no record of your daughter wearing anything new. April 20th. Airbnb in the Valley 2 nights. Host confirms 2 guests. And so on. He turned pages with the calm of men who know every sheet weighs. Not everything is money. There are patterns of absence. He plays golf on Saturdays that coincide with charges in restaurants in the city. She, Amanda, works late on weekdays but gets sick on Friday afternoons. Photos, the necessary ones. Here you have him entering the building on the south side with her. Here leaving a restaurant downtown. Here holding hands inside a mall, open shots without invading homes. And watch out without license plates that reveal third parties. This is to convince not to publish. I took the folder. I do not shake easily, but there are images that feel like biting ice. Not for the act. 2 adults can do what they want, but for the method, the cynicism of building a new house, with bricks stolen from the old one. Anything from the firm, I asked. I do not access internal files, but there are calls crossed with clients of Michael's firm who then appear as opportunities in Summit Consulting. If your son-in-law's contract prohibits client poaching, this is gunpowder. not ours, his bosses. I do not care about his prestige. I said, I care about my daughter. I know, but everything adds up when the other side tries to paint your daughter as a jealous, crazy woman. He leaned in. I warn you of another thing. Your son-in-law is nervous since Saturday. He ordered a check of cameras in his building, changed passwords. He has not turned to look at his father-in-law, but he smells that something moved. I smiled without humor. He heard, I know everything. To some men that phrase thunders louder than a pistol. Well, it already thundered. When do you plan to talk to Emily? When the file is ready to withstand denial in theater? I am not going to throw her into a fight barehanded. So 2 weeks to hand her a package a judge would respect. And Arthur, he looked at me, serious. Do not go off the rails. Not a call to the subject. Not a little heated text. Pride is a bad compass. At my age, pride is administered. And I already had my wars. We went out to the street. The air brought the smell of rain. I squeezed the folder under my arm as if I were carrying a baby. On the way back, I stopped at the park, sat in front of the fountain, and let the noise of the water organize my thoughts. Think cold, that is what they taught me. Writing helps, so I opened the notebook. Objective protect Emily. Resources verifiable. Truth. Good lawyer financial plan so they do not leave her with nothing. Risks. Michael's emotional manipulation, gaslighting that Emily blames herself. Countermeasures, clear evidence accompaniment, not letting her go in the middle of the bridge. I put away the notebook. I bought bread for the afternoon donuts, for me muffins for when I see her, and returned to Queens. At home, I labeled photos, dates, receipts. I divided the material into 3 envelopes for Emily for lawyer backup. On top of all of them, I put a sheet with a single phrase, none of this is your fault. That night, while the city was going to bed with its sirens and its barking, the phone rang. Thomas's number. Last piece of data for today, he said. They saw him leaving a real estate agency in the suburbs with Amanda. They are looking for a house in her name down payment from the consulting firm's account. I took 2 clean photos of them. I will deliver them tomorrow. Good, I replied. Every brick in its place. And tomorrow, Thomas, we start phase 2, choosing a lawyer. Emily is not going to arrive alone in that ring. I did not hang up with rage. I hung up with certainty. The plan was already breathing on its own, and I, for the first time in years, breathed with it. The following Monday, I got up before dawn. Not because insomnia chases me at 72, I learned to sleep when one can, but because big plans are thought of with a fresh head. I heated the griddle and had eggs and beans austere, like in my barracks years. Meanwhile, I spread on the table the 3 envelopes I had prepared for Emily for lawyer backup. I looked at them like someone reviewing their artillery before battle. Pieces were missing, but they already had shape. My next move was clear, getting the legal backing Emily would need. One thing is the truth. Another thing is how it is used in a court. In my life, I learned that strategy is not just being right, but being ready for when the enemy denies attacks or twists. And Michael, with how cynical I know him to be, would do all that. I thought about who could recommend a good family lawyer. I remembered Laura, a friend of my wife from high school. Now retired, but with a lawyer daughter. I called Laura in the morning. Mrs. Laura, this is Arthur speaking. Do you remember me? Of course, Arthur. How are you? I explained without intimate details, just the essentials that my daughter might soon need serious representation for a complicated divorce. She kept silent for a few seconds and then passed me her daughter's contact. Attorney Patricia Davis, specialist in infidelity cases and hiding of assets. She is tough, but fair, Laura told me. She does not let herself be intimidated and knows all the tricks. I wrote down the number and thanked her. By mid-morning, it was already dialed on my cell phone. Patricia answered with a firm voice, direct without ornaments. We agreed to see each other at her office downtown on Tuesday. I asked for total discretion. She accepted, with an in my trade. Silence is worth more than gold. That same Monday, I met again with Thomas in his office. The neighborhood with its food trucks and workshop tarps looks chaotic. but it is territory that knows how to keep secrets. He received me in a modest office metal filing cabinets, framed old photos, smell of tobacco impregnated in the walls. Here is the new stuff, he told me, sliding an envelope. Photos of the visit to the real estate agency. Michael and Amanda looking at blueprints, her smiling as if she already saw curtains on the windows. The down payment attempts to be covered with money from the consulting firm they set up. I reviewed the images. They were not proofs of secret love. They were proofs of planning a future. That hurt me more. He was not only cheating, he was building another home. And on top of that, with resources that were also Emily's. With this, we already have timeline companies, money flow, explained Thomas. Missing are the pieces of their marriage contract, seeing if there are assets in shared names. That is where the lawyer comes in. I nodded. I asked him to prepare a clean, organized report, ready to show. No technicalities that would confuse Emily. It is in process. I will deliver it on Friday. Leaving the office, I walked through the district, feeling that heavy neighborhood air that mixes danger and daily life. I thought of Michael, who surely had never stepped in this neighborhood, with his Italian shoes and expensive perfume. Men like him think the world starts and ends in their bubble. But in places like this, one learns that no one is untouchable. On Tuesday, I arrived at Patricia Davis's office. Old building remodeled with sober taste. She received me herself, a woman of about 40. Dark suit, a gaze that mixes courtesy with an edge. "Mr. Robinson, come in. Your mom spoke to me. Do you want to tell me what it is about?" I sat down and opened my briefcase. I took out copies of what Thomas had gathered. Bank statements, photos, names, dates. I summarized the story without embellishing the unfaithful son-in-law, the company with the mistress, the joint money. Patricia reviewed with trained eyes. Here are strong elements. Use of marital society resources for personal ends, hiding of income, but illegal poaching of firm clients. If your daughter decides to divorce, this is sufficient ammunition. I do not want revenge, I clarified. I want to armor her. That he does not leave her with nothing, that he does not manipulate her, that he does not rip away her dignity. Then we need 3 steps. 1, secure bank accounts and documentation before he smells the confrontation. 2, prepare a lawsuit with solid evidence to avoid delays. 3, emotional and strategic support, so your daughter does not yield to pressure. She gave me a list of documents Emily had to gather. Marriage certificate, house statements, copies of deeds, any contract. I nodded, feeling the discipline of being in an operation. "When your daughter is ready to talk," said Patricia, "I will accompany her. But she has to be the one to decide." I left the office with the conviction that the legal terrain already had a general. Now the hardest part was missing telling Emily. That night I called her. She answered with a tired voice. "Dad, I was just finishing a report. Emily, we have to see each other. You and me, nothing else. Tomorrow at noon at the usual coffee shop, the one across from the park. Is it that serious?" "Yes, honey, it is serious." She stayed silent for a few seconds and then accepted. I hung up and stayed seated in the darkness of my living room. I felt the weight of what I was about to drop. Revealing the truth is like detonating a mine. It destroys what it touches, although at the same time it clears the ground. On Wednesday, I arrived early at the coffee shop. I carried with me an envelope with the preliminary evidence and the lawyer's list. I chose a table in the corner where discretion is possible. Emily arrived punctual, dressed in a suit, her hair tied back. She looked tired, but upon seeing me smiled with tenderness. "What is wrong, Dad? You have me nervous." I breathed deep. There is no manual for destroying illusions, not even if you have been military all your life. "Honey, what I am going to tell you is going to hurt, but I prefer you hear it from me with proof in hand than discover it alone when it is already too late." I put the envelope in front of her. She opened it with trembling hands. She looked at the photos, the receipts, the names. At first she shook her head. Then the tears started to roll. "No, it cannot be. Michael told me he was working," what her voice broke. "Amanda. Who is Amanda?" I let her cry for a few seconds. I did not interrupt. I learned that initial crying is relief, not weakness. When she raised her gaze, I spoke slowly. He met her at a conference. They have a company together. They are using your money to finance it, and they are looking for a house. Emily tightened her lips. Since when do you know? 3 weeks? And in this time I have gathered evidence. I did not want to come with words, but with facts. So you do not doubt. So he does not manipulate you. She lowered her gaze, breathing deep. I feel stupid. All this time I thought the problem was me. It is not your fault, honey. It is not. He decided to betray, and he planned it with calculation. I told her about the lawyer, about the strategy. I told her she would decide the pace, but that I would accompany her in every step. Emily nodded slowly. I need a day to process. But thanks, Dad. Thanks for not leaving me alone. She took my hand like when she was a child. I squeezed it, swearing in silence that no one would humiliate her again while I breathed. That was the beginning. The mine had exploded. Now remained clearing the ground and rebuilding. And I, at my 72, was ready to be the bricklayer of my daughter's dignity. Thursday dawned, with the city wrapped in that light fog that looks like smoke of memories. As soon as I opened my eyes, the heavy sensation arrived that this day would be different. Emily already knew the truth, and when a daughter knows that the love of her life is a lie, the complete world wobbles. I turned on the coffee maker, poured my clay mug, and reviewed on the table the 3 envelopes. Now one of them was already in Emily's hands. The first step was fulfilled. The difficult part was what was coming accompanying her without imposing, holding her without deciding for her. I learned in the army that the line between guiding and controlling is thin. A father must know where he stands. At 10, my cell phone rang. It was Emily. I answered calmly, although my heart was pounding. Dad, her voice was hoarse, like from having cried all night. I want to talk. But not here, not in my house. Can we meet at your apartment? Whenever you want, honey. I am here. At 11 sharp, she arrived. She came in jeans and a t-shirt without makeup. She looked like a younger version of her mother when I met her, fragile and strong at the same time. As soon as she crossed the door, she hugged me like she had not done since high school. I did not sleep, she confessed. I spent it reading and rereading those proofs. It is real. I cannot deny it. And the more I think about it, the more pieces fit. The calls he did not answer, the trips, the excuses. I sat her at the table and served her coffee. She held it with both hands as if the heat anchored her. Dad, I am afraid. I do not know how to face Michael. I do not know how he is going to react. He has always had that way of speaking that makes me doubt myself. That is why we have evidence, I replied. And that is why we are going to enter with strategy. I will introduce you to someone tomorrow, Attorney Patricia Davis. She is a family lawyer, tough but fair. She will guide you legally. Emily nodded, breathing deep. What if he tries to keep the house or my money? We will not allow it. The lawyer already has a plan, and Thomas the investigator keeps gathering evidence. You are not alone, honey. We stayed in silence for a few minutes. Then she, with wet eyes, told me something that went through me. Dad, why did you not tell me before I told her the truth, that I waited to have solid evidence, that I did not want to see her suffer with suspicion without backing, that I preferred to carry the weight myself a few days before throwing it on her shoulders? She listened to me, and although the wound of betrayal did not erase, she understood my decision. Thanks, she whispered. I do not know how I am going to do it, but I know I do not want to keep living with someone who sees me as a nuisance. That was her first step, acknowledging there would be no going back. The next day I accompanied her to Patricia's office downtown. We entered together, but the lawyer received us, speaking directly to Emily, as it should be. You are the client. You decide. I only show you paths and consequences. During 2 hours, Patricia explained options suing for adultery and misuse of resources, asking for provisional measures to protect accounts and assets, requesting compensation for money spent on the mistress. Emily listened with attention, taking notes like in her work meetings. I watched her transform from hurt victim to strategist, planning her next move. The first thing Patricia concluded is securing evidence. Arthur already has a solid package, but we must complement it with official documents, account statements, copies of deeds contracts. Emily, you will have to enter your own house and gather everything possible without Michael suspecting. Emily paled. What if he discovers me? You will have to act like always pretend nothing has changed. That is your best weapon. The lawyer looked at her firmly. Can you do it? Emily hesitated a second, but then tightened her lips. Yes, I can do it. We left the office with a clear plan. Emily would gather documents in the coming days. Patricia would prepare precautionary measures. Thomas would keep tracking the movements of the ghost company. I would be the link, the support, the old man who keeps the envelopes as if they were grenades ready to explode. On Saturday afternoon, Emily went to her house as if nothing was happening. I waited in a nearby cafe, cell phone in hand. After 2 hours, she sent me a message. I did it. I have copies of deeds, statements, certificates. No one suspects. When she appeared at the cafe with the backpack full of papers, I hugged her. You are stronger than you think. I do not feel strong, she said, trembling. I feel like I am in a spy movie. Welcome to the club, I replied, trying to smile. Sunday was for rest. We cooked together in my apartment red rice, chicken stew, and warm tortillas. Emily laughed, remembering how her mother always complained that I cut the onion wrong. For the first time in days, I saw her smile with sincerity. Dad, she said suddenly while serving the stew, do you remember when you told me to never let anyone step on me? Of course. Well, now I understand what you were talking about. I thought love was enduring, that staying silent was saving. But no staying silent is dying slowly. I looked at her with pride. My daughter was waking up. That night I went to bed knowing that the worst, the revelation, had already passed. What was coming was hard, yes, lawyers, confrontations, tears. But now we were not two soldiers in separate trenches. We were a united front, and I, old and tired, still had gunpowder to protect my daughter. The following Monday we would receive the final report from Thomas. That would be the cannon with which we would enter the legal battlefield. While reconciling sleep, I thought about Michael's face when he heard from Emily's lips the phrase I had already whispered to him. I know everything. The difference would be that this time the evidence would fall like artillery, and there would be no trench to hide in. Monday dawned with that cold air that penetrates old bones. I put on a thick sweater and went down to buy bread at the corner stand. While choosing the donuts, I thought about what awaited me. Thomas would deliver the final report. That folder would not just be paper. It would be the dynamite with which Emily could free her life. I returned to the apartment, put on a pot of coffee, and sat down to wait. At 11, the bell rang. Thomas entered with his leather briefcase, took off his hat, and put it on the table. Without beating around the bush, he took out a thick manila envelope, fatter than the previous ones. He placed it in front of me. Here it is, Arthur. Everything a judge would respect. Dates, photos, account statements, official records. There are no cracks. I opened the envelope with firm hands. Inside came an impeccable index, chronology of meetings between Michael and Amanda, account statements and transfers, consulting firm expenses, photos in restaurants, hotels, real estate agencies, company documentation. I started to review. March dinner downtown, almost $500. April jewelry of $5,000 at Burger. June Airbnb in the Valley 2 nights. August work trip to Vegas in reality conference where Amanda appeared. October rent payment for an apartment on the south side in the name of the consulting firm. Thomas explained every point to me like presenting a military case. Here you have the proof of use of joint accounts. He pointed to a statement. Transfer of $30,000 that disappeared toward the new card. And here purchases of furniture charged as office expenses when in reality they are for the mistress's apartment. He also showed me the incorporation act of the company. Named Summit Consulting, LLC. Partners Michael Stevens and Amanda Reynolds. This is gold. I said, closing the folder. It is an armored file, replied Thomas. Now what follows is that your daughter decides how to use it. Is she going to confront immediately? No. First, she will go to the lawyer. She will know how and when. We shook hands. Thomas left, and I stayed alone with the envelope. I caressed it like someone holding a loaded weapon. I did not feel joy, but gravity. Every sheet was a piece of Emily's life that Michael had betrayed. In the afternoon, I summoned my daughter to my apartment. She arrived punctual with tired eyes, but a straight back. I put the envelope on the table. Honey, here is everything. There is no possible doubt. Emily opened the envelope and started to read. Her eyes went from one paper to another, sometimes reddened, sometimes cold. When she saw the photo of Michael and Amanda at the real estate agency, she let out a choked sob. Look how he smiles, she said, as if everything we built was worth nothing. I put my hand on her shoulder. That does not matter anymore, Emily. What matters is that now you have the power. She nodded, wiping her tears. I want to see him burn, Dad, not for revenge, but because I do not want him to ever look at me as weak again. Then get ready. Tomorrow we go with Attorney Patricia. On Tuesday we return to the office downtown. Patricia scanned Thomas's report, quickly marking points with a red pen. Perfect. Here we have adultery, misuse of resources, hiding of assets, illicit partnership with the mistress. It is a devastating combo. Emily listened with attention. I kept quiet. The war was no longer mine. It was hers. Emily said, Patricia, the first thing will be filing precautionary measures to freeze accounts and ensure he does not move assets. Afterward, the divorce suit, with proof of infidelity and economic mismanagement. With this, you will not only prevent him from keeping the house, but you will be able to recover the money used on the mistress. Emily breathed deep. How long can all this take depends on his reaction. If he defends, it can be months. But with this file, the most likely thing is that he surrenders and seeks a settlement. Leaving the office, we walked through the city in silence. The trees were dropping yellow leaves, and the wind dragged them like broken memories. Emily stopped abruptly. Dad, I am afraid. Not of losing money, nor the house. I am afraid of facing his gaze. Michael always knew how to make me feel small. I hugged her, then looked at him with these proofs in hand. Nothing makes a person bigger than the truth. That same day at night, Emily called me. Dad, I have made a decision. I am going to confront him. I stayed silent for a few seconds. Are you ready? I do not know if ready, but I am decided. I do not want to continue one more day with this lie. We agreed she would do it Thursday night when Michael arrived from work. She would have the file on the table as irrefutable evidence. I would not be there. It was her battle. But I would be close, waiting for her call. On Thursday afternoon, I went to her house before her. I checked that everything was in order, that the cameras worked, that she had copies of everything stored in my apartment. I left a backup envelope in her bedroom just in case. When Emily arrived, she hugged me tight. Thanks for being here, Dad. Always. I left before Michael arrived. On the way back to my apartment, my heart was beating strong. I knew that in that moment my daughter was preparing to release the truth that would give her back her life. At 10 at night, my cell phone rang. It was Emily. I answered with an accelerated pulse. Dad, I did it. I confronted him. And at first he denied it. Then he said it was a complicated friendship. After that, he got angry and yelled at me, asking how dare I spy on him. But when he saw the proofs, he stayed quiet. In the end, I myself told him the marriage was finished, that I would ask for the divorce. And him? He stayed mute. The only thing he managed to say was, You cannot destroy my career. I stayed quiet a few seconds, processing. Honey, you did not destroy anything. He destroyed himself. Emily cried on the other side of the line, but her crying sounded different. It was not of pain, it was of liberation. That night, I slept with a peace I had not known since my wife's death. My daughter had faced her executioner with dignity, and I, at my 72, understood that my mission had not ended. Now I had to help her build what was coming. On Friday morning at my table in Queens, I opened the notebook and wrote, Stage 1 accomplished. Emily is no longer a victim. She is a combatant. What follows holding her, protecting her, legally reminding her every day that she is not alone. I closed the notebook and smiled. The battle was just beginning, but the victory was already written. The Friday after the confrontation, I woke up with a strange silence in my chest. It was not the calm of victory, nor the weight of defeat. It was the tension of knowing that the hardest part was still to arrive. Emily had taken the most painful step, but now came the long. War lawyers, frozen accounts, attrition strategies. And I, with my 72 years and my stubborn gray hairs, knew that the enemy does not collapse in a single blow. First, he wobbles, then he counterattacks. By mid-morning, Emily arrived at my apartment with a small suitcase. She entered without speaking, left the suitcase next to the armchair, and sat down. I saw her differently, not defeated, but tired, like a soldier returning from a night battle. I slept nothing, she said, looking at the floor. After he went to lock himself in the bedroom, I gathered my most important things and left. I did not want to stay under the same roof. I served her coffee and offered the armchair to rest, but she shook her head. I do not want to sleep. I want to act. That tore a proud smile from me. I recognized in her gaze that spark I myself carried when planning operations in my youth. Physical fatigue does not kill the one who already decided to get up. At noon, we went to see Patricia, the lawyer. She was already waiting in her office with the documents prepared. She reviewed the papers Emily had managed to take from the house and added Thomas's report to the file. Very well, said Patricia. We will present the request for precautionary measures on Monday. That will freeze the joint accounts and prevent Michael from moving money. We will also ask that he hand over financial information of the consulting firm. And the house, asked Emily. It is in both names. That complicates things, but with the proofs of infidelity and diversion of resources, you have the advantage. The most likely thing is that to not expose himself, he agrees to negotiate and yield. Emily nodded with determination. Then let us do it. I listened in silence, proud to see her speak with firmness. I remembered the girl who trembled when she had to present in high school, and compared her to this woman who now designed her counterattack with a sure voice. Pain was tempering her. We spent that weekend together in my apartment. We cooked, watched old movies, talked about her mother. From time to time, Emily broke into tears, but each time she got up faster. On Sunday afternoon, she confessed something to me. Do you know what hurts me more, Dad? Not that he cheated on me, but that he made me believe I was the guilty one. He repeated so much that I was absent, that I did not know how to take care of a marriage, that I ended up believing it. I answered with firmness. That is called manipulation. It was not you, it was him. And now you have plenty of proof to never doubt again. Monday kicked off the legal stage. Patricia presented the precautionary measures, and in a matter of days, the judge ordered the accounts frozen. Michael exploded. I knew because he called me directly that same night. Mr. Robinson, his voice sounded out of control. You are behind all this. I breathed deep before answering. I am behind my daughter Michael. Nothing more. This is going to cost me my career. You do not know who you are messing with. On the contrary, I know perfectly who, and you have no idea who you messed with when you decided to humiliate my daughter. He hung up abruptly. I stayed with the phone in my hand, remembering his words. They did not scare me. At my age, one no longer fears empty threats. But I did confirm that Michael was going to fight dirty. The next day, Emily received an email from him full of accusations, that she was ungrateful, that she was manipulated by me, that if she continued, he would tell things that would destroy her. Emily showed me the message with tears of impotence. See, he already started. I hugged her and spoke calmly. That is what cowards do when they lose ground, threaten. But they are words. What is important are facts, and the facts are on our side. Patricia, upon reading the email, almost smiled. Perfect. This demonstrates attempt at intimidation. We will annex it to the file. The more he screams, the more he sinks. That same week, Thomas gave us another key piece of information. He discovered that Michael and Amanda were transferring money from the consulting firm to a dollar account opened in a foreign bank. This already touches on criminal, said Thomas with gravity. If a judge sees this, Michael can have serious problems with the IRS. When we told Patricia, she was blunt. That is dynamite. But careful, we must handle it with precision. We will use the threat of exposing him to negotiate better. Emily looked at me with a mix of fear and amazement. Do you realize, Dad? The man I loved is willing to do anything, even fraud. That is why I answered, he is no longer the man you loved. That one left a long time ago. On Friday, we had the first conciliation hearing. Michael arrived in a suit with a fake smile. I watched him from the hallway without approaching. Emily entered with Patricia, head held high. For 2 hours, they discussed economic measures, properties, responsibilities. Michael tried to show himself confident. But when Patricia mentioned the consulting firm and presented the first documents, I saw him sweat. On the way out, Emily hugged me tight. You saw it right. For the first time, it was not him who had control. I saw it, honey, and I enjoyed it. That night we ate burgers at the corner, laughing like we had not done in years. For the first time since everything started, I saw in my daughter's eyes not only pain, but also hope. Upon returning to my apartment, I opened my notebook and wrote, Stage 2 initiated. Michael shows cracks. Emily no longer lets herself be intimidated. The war is long, but the enemy has lost his best weapon, fear. I closed the notebook with a serene smile. The battle was not yet won, but I already knew the end would be ours. Because where there is truth and dignity, not even the most calculated lie can sustain itself. And so, at my 72, I discovered that the most important war of my life had not been in the barracks, nor on foreign borders, but in the courts and hallways of this city, defending my daughter from the man who swore to love her and instead betrayed her. The Saturday after the first hearing, I woke up with the sensation that a weight had moved from my shoulders. It did not disappear, of course, but it changed place. It was no longer the burden of keeping a secret, but the responsibility of accompanying my daughter in every step of this war. Emily had faced Michael without trembling, and although the battle was just beginning, I knew the hardest part had already passed, the fear. That day, I decided to invite her to walk through Central Park. We had not done it for years. We bought coffee at a stand and sat on a bench under the trees. I saw her more relaxed, as if the fresh air returned something of what Michael had snatched from her. Dad, she told me. After a long silence yesterday, I realized something. In the hearing, when he tried to smile and talk like nothing happened, he no longer scared me. I saw him small, as if his power had been pure smoke. Because that is how it was, I replied. The power of cowards is making you believe you are worth less. But once you unmask them, they are left naked. Emily sighed and drank a sip of coffee. It still hurts. I still miss him at times, even though I know what he did. Is it normal? Of course it is normal. You do not just mourn the man who betrayed you. You mourn the woman you were with him. And saying goodbye to oneself is harder than saying goodbye to anyone else. She remained thoughtful. Then she smiled with tenderness. You know Mom would be proud of you. I swallowed hard. At my 72, there are still words that break you like a child. The following Monday, we received good news. The judge accepted the precautionary measures. The joint accounts remained frozen, and Michael could not freely dispose of funds. Patricia explained it to us in her office with a professional satisfaction barely hidden. This is key, she said. Now he cannot hide money or transfer it without triggering an alert. Next is the formal lawsuit. Michael, upon finding out, exploded. He let us know, sending a message to Emily, you are digging your own grave. This is going to get ugly. When she showed it to me, I thought about how manipulation changes masks. Before it was cruel jokes, then silences, now threats. I caressed her shoulder. That message says nothing about you, honey. It says everything about him. Keep it. It will serve us. Patricia, upon seeing the message, smiled coldly. Perfect. We will annex it as proof of intimidation. Michael thinks he scares, but he only gifts us ammunition. That week, Thomas called us with another finding. He had tracked movements of the consulting firm and discovered transfers to a real estate agency upstate. They are looking for land there, he explained. Amanda and he went to visit 2 weeks ago. I have photos and records of the initial payments. When we told Emily, she froze. Upstate. But he told me he was in Chicago for work. I hugged her. Every lie becomes proof, honey. They can no longer hide anything. On Thursday, we had the second hearing. This time, Michael arrived with a different air. Not the fake smile, but the hard face of someone who knows he is cornered. His lawyer tried to argue that Mrs. Emily was manipulated by me, that everything was a plot of the resentful father-in-law. Emily, instead of bowing her head, like before, raised her voice. I do not need anyone to manipulate me. I have eyes evidence, and I have dignity. The room went silent. I from the back almost applauded. That was the first time I heard my daughter defend herself with that firmness in front of him. After the hearing, we celebrated with some steak tacos on Main Street. Emily ate with appetite, as if she had gone months without tasting something with flavor. Between bites, she told me, you know what? I feel free. Even if this lasts months, I no longer carry the guilt. I no longer ask myself what I did wrong. That is the most important thing, I replied. Whatever comes is just paperwork. On Saturday night, while she slept in my apartment, I sat down with my notebook. I wrote Stage 3. Emily no longer fears. Michael tries to counterattack with intimidation, but every blow gives us more evidence. The legal battle advances, but the emotional battle is almost won. My daughter no longer blames herself. I closed the notebook and poured myself a drink. I drank it slowly, looking out the window at the city lights. I thought about all the times I had felt old useless, a nuisance at dinners where Michael ridiculed me. And I smiled, realizing something. At my 72, I was fighting the most important war of my life. The following Monday, Patricia summoned us to review the divorce lawsuit. It was drafted with surgical precision, proven infidelity, misuse of resources, attempt to hide assets. Emily read it calmly, and then signed without hesitating. Ready, she said. There is no turning back now. The lawyer raised her eyes and congratulated her. That is the true beginning of your new life. We left the office with the sun hitting strong downtown. Emily breathed deep and said, Dad, do you know what I feel? That I no longer crawl. I walk upright. I nodded proud. That is how one walks when carrying the truth in hand. And we kept moving, knowing that months of struggle still remained, but also knowing that the biggest part was already won, dignity recovered. The following Tuesday, after Emily signed the lawsuit, the city dawned as if it did not care about anything. Heavy traffic food carts opening on corners, people running to the subway. But for me, everything looked different. I felt that every horn, every noise was a kind of distant applause. My daughter had finally taken the reins of her life. By mid-morning, Thomas called me. His tone sounded graver than usual. Arthur, your son-in-law is moving fast. Today he will ask for a temporary leave at the firm. He says it is for personal reasons, but in reality, he attempts to shield himself. Shield himself from what? From what is coming. He is looking to sell his part of the consulting firm in Amanda's name. Transfer ownership to not appear on paper when the summons arrives. I bit my lip. Can you prove it? I am already documenting it. But careful, when a man like that feels he is sinking, he can get dangerous. I hung up and stayed thinking. I remembered all the times I saw him make cruel jokes at the table, always sure no one dared stop him. Now that same man was hiding behind his mistress and shady dealings. That same day we ate with Patricia, in her office. We told her what Thomas had discovered. She frowned. That is not a surprise. It is what almost everyone does, try to move assets before the judge steps in. But we already have the joint accounts frozen, and with Thomas's report, we can request an urgent measure to track transfers in the consulting firm. Emily looked tired, but firm. And what happens if he puts everything in Amanda's name? Then she becomes co-responsible. Believe me, Emily, your husband does not realize how clumsy he is. He is digging his own legal grave. We left the office at sunset. We walked through the park with the trees starting to bloom. Emily stopped to look at them. Dad, do you remember when we came here when I was a girl? You bought me lemon ice cream. Yes, and you always finished it before reaching the fountain. She smiled, the first genuine smile in days. Thanks for being here now. I feel like you give me back the girl I was. I just hugged her without words. On Thursday, they summoned us to court for the formal notification to Michael. He arrived with his lawyer, that arrogant smile that already looked like a plaster mask. When he received the copy of the lawsuit, his face disfigured. He looked at me sideways as if he wanted to devour me, but I held his gaze. This is a circus, he said aloud so everyone would hear. Emily is being manipulated by her father, a resentful old man. Emily, instead of bowing her head like before, raised her voice. I do not need anyone to manipulate me. What manipulates me are your lies. The judge asked for silence, but I saw how Michael's face lost color. That was the first time he understood he no longer had dominion over her. That weekend, Emily moved definitely to my apartment. Between the two of us, we arranged her things, boxes with clothes, books, papers. While placing her photos on the shelf, she told me, "It feels weird, like starting from zero at 35. It is not starting from zero, honey. It is starting without chains." I turned on the radio with oldies music, and we cooked together. She laughed heartily again. That night, I saw her fall asleep, calm without the wrinkles of worry that had marked her face the last months. The following Monday, Thomas arrived with a new finding. That night, while eating noodle soup, Emily told me with a low voice, "Dad, did you ever think your daughter would be in the middle of a case like this?" "No," I admitted. "One always dreams that children find someone who takes care of them. But when life gets it wrong, the only thing left is to fight." She smiled with sadness. "Well, let us fight then." On Wednesday, we had another hearing. This time Michael did not speak. His lawyer did it all. He argued that Amanda was just a colleague, that the consulting firm was an innocent project, that the photos were misinterpreted. Patricia presented Thomas's documents, every transfer, every payment, every receipt. The judge took note. When we left, Michael passed close to me and murmured, "This is not going to stay like this, old man." I looked him in the eyes and replied calmly, "It no longer depends on you." He walked away, but I noticed his walk was clumsy, as if for the first time he did not know where to go. That night I wrote in my notebook, Stage 4, the lie crumbles. Michael no longer screams, no longer smile. Now he is silent, and that silence is a sign of defeat. Emily walks upright. The enemy shows cracks every day. The end approaches. I put away the notebook, turned off the light, and allowed myself something I had not done since everything started. Sleep without startled awakenings. Because I knew that although battles remained, the war was decided. The man who wanted to humiliate me in front of everyone, who said I should lick off the floor, what I had dropped, was about to fall to his knees. And not because of me, but because of my daughter's strength. And I, old retired soldier, had the privilege of witnessing the greatest victory of my life, Emily's dignity, being reborn from the ruins. Thursday dawned with a strange sun, one of those that seemed to announce changes. From early on, I received a message from Emily. "Dad, today I want to go to the office alone. I need to feel I can face this without you being by my side all the time. Do you understand me?" I stayed looking at the screen a few seconds. It was not a rejection, it was a declaration of independence. And that deep down filled me with pride. I replied, "Of course, honey. But remember, I am always a call away." I started preparing coffee and toast, and while chewing slowly, I thought about how fast everything had changed. In a matter of weeks, Emily had gone from crying at my table like a girl to walking with her forehead high through the hallways of a courthouse. It was not that she no longer suffered, it was that she had discovered pain could also be used as fuel. That same day, mid-afternoon, Thomas called me. His voice sounded serious more than usual. "Arthur, we have a problem. Michael and Amanda are moving cash, not just transfers. I took photos. I saw them withdrawing money at the teller and then entering an accounting office. I think they plan to hide cash in a safety deposit box." I stayed silent a few seconds. "Can that affect us?" "Not directly. But if they manage to hide money, the process lengthens, and Emily needs to close it soon to rebuild her life." "Then do not lose sight of them," I asked. "Every movement, every step documented." I hung up with a knot in my stomach. Cowards, when they see everything falling, always try one last play. That night, when Emily returned to my apartment, I found her with tired eyes but a different energy. "Today was weird, Dad. Michael appeared in my office. He asked me to talk like adults." "What did he tell you?" "That we were still in time to fix it between us. That if I withdrew the lawsuit, he would leave me the house, and we could separate in peace." "And what did you answer?" Emily smiled with irony. "I told him no, that I was no longer interested in his peace nor his pity, that what I want is justice." I could not avoid laughing out of pride more than anything else. "That is it, honey. Now he is the one begging." On Saturday, we received another call from Patricia. "I have news for you," she told us with a firm tone. "The judge has accepted reviewing the financial movements of the consulting firm. That means, in a matter of weeks, we will have official access to his accounts." Emily raised her gaze with surprise. "What if they already took out the money?" "Even if they take it out, tracks remain," replied Patricia. "There is no escape." I nodded, satisfied. The web was closing. On Sunday, I decided to take Emily to the cemetery where her mother rests. We had not done it for years. We bought fresh flowers at a stand and stood in front of the tombstone. Emily knelt, caressed the stone, and whispered, "Mom, I am fine. It hurts, but I am fine. Dad has not left me alone." I stayed back, giving her space. Then she got up, took my arm, and said, "Do you know what I feel, that Mom is also watching over me in this?" I could not speak. I only squeezed her hand. The following Monday was key. Patricia summoned us early to prepare the next hearing. Before entering, she took me aside. "Arthur, I must tell you something. Michael is nervous. His lawyer hinted to me he wants to negotiate an out-of-court settlement. And what does Emily think that I must discuss with her? But I want you to know it is a sign they feel they are losing." When we entered the room, I confirmed it. Michael was different, not arrogant, but tired, with his tie knot loose and dark circles marked. He barely looked at Emily. The judge listened to both parties. Patricia was clear, proven infidelity, diversion of resources, fraud, and partnership. Michael's lawyer barely managed to defend him. On the way out, I saw him approach Emily. For a moment, I thought he would return with threats, but instead he lowered his voice and said, "Emily, this is going to destroy us both." She looked him in the face without an ounce of fear. "No, Michael, this is going to destroy you. I am just freeing myself." He stayed frozen. I, from behind, felt a pride so big it almost made me cry. That night in the apartment, Emily sat with me on the balcony. We looked at the city lights while sharing a bottle of cheap wine. "You know what, Dad?" she said. "I think I no longer hate him." I looked at her surprised. "How, yes." At first I hated him. Imagine him with her kept me awake. Now I pity him, because he was left with nothing. I, on the other hand, keep you my job, my friends, the life I am going to build. He only has his traps. I smiled proud. "That is the biggest thing, honey. Hate ties you, pity frees you." On Wednesday, we received Thomas's final report. He delivered it in a black folder. Here is everything. Transfers, cash, withdrawals, contracts, photos. It is a complete map of how Michael buried himself. Emily took it calmly, like someone receiving a key. "Thanks, Thomas. Thanks for giving me the proofs that give me back my voice." He nodded, serious. "You have no idea how brave you are, girl." That Friday was the last hearing of that month. Patricia presented the complete package. The judge listened to everything in silence. Michael, however, did not open his mouth. For the first time, I saw him defeated. When we left, Emily breathed deep and told me, "It is over, Dad. Maybe the sentence is missing, but it is over." I hugged her tight, feeling that my 72 years made sense only for being there accompanying that rebirth. That night before sleeping, I opened my notebook and wrote, "Stage 5, Michael broken. Emily free. The enemy is no longer a monster, he is just a man naked of power. What comes is no longer war, it is reconstruction." I turned off the light and smiled, because I knew that after so much pain, my daughter had crossed the most important border. She no longer feared, and that for me was the true victory. Monday dawned with a different air. The sky was clear and the city sounded friendlier than normal. I got up early, made coffee, and wrote in my notebook, "Today reconstruction begins." Emily came out of the bedroom with her hair tied back and a simple dress. She looked calm, although under that calm I knew she kept carrying scars. "I slept 8 hours straight," she told me, surprised. I think I had not achieved that in years. I served her coffee in her favorite mug, the one she kept since college with a chipped rim. "It is the body charging what the mind took from it," I replied. "Now that you do not have to pretend in front of Michael, even sleep returns." That same day, Patricia called to inform us the judge had accepted the official review of the consulting firm's assets. That meant, in a matter of weeks, all transfers and contracts would come to light, no matter how much Michael tried to hide. "We are in the final stretch," said the lawyer. "He knows it. That is why he has kept silence." Emily listened with a mix of relief and melancholy. When we hung up, she looked at me serious. "Dad, do you realize? For years I lived with a man who seemed invincible, who made me feel small. And now he hides behind lawyers and excuses. Because he never was strong, honey. He only knew how to scream, louder." She nodded as if finally understanding it for real. On Wednesday, we received unexpected news. Thomas arrived with a grave expression and showed us new photos. Michael and Amanda arguing in the street in front of a restaurant downtown. He was raising his hands, desperate. She was crying and walking away. "It seems pressure is also breaking their romance," said Thomas. "Maybe Amanda does not want to sink with him." Emily looked at the photos in silence. Then she left them on the table and commented, "I do not care. I do not care if he continues with her or if he loses her. The only thing I want is closing this chapter." I observed her proud. She had passed from rage and obsession to indifference, the true sign that the wound was healing. That weekend I decided to take her out of the routine. I took her to the lake to a pier an old friend still managed. We bought snacks, flowers, and a bottle of cheap wine. We navigated the water while a live band played on other boats. "I have not come here in years," said Emily, looking at the water. Michael always said this was tacky. "Well, here we are enjoying it, tacky and free of chains." She laughed an authentic laugh that echoed among the boats. We toasted with plastic cups. "To freedom," she said. "To dignity," I added. And we drank. The following Monday, the official notification arrived. The preliminary sentence gave Emily exclusive use of the house while the process lasted. It prohibited Michael from approaching without prior notice, and ordered restitution of part of the money spent on the mistress. When Patricia informed us, Emily breathed deep. "It is justice, Dad. Not complete, but justice," the lawyer answered with firmness. "It is the beginning of your new life." That afternoon in my apartment, Emily confessed something to me that moved me to the soul. "Dad, do you know what was the worst? Not the infidelity. The worst was that he convinced me I was small. And today I realize I'm not." "You discovered that alone," I replied. "I was only here to remind you." She hugged me for a long time, like when she was a child, and woke up from a nightmare. The following days were different. Emily returned to work with energy. Her colleagues received her with affection and soon called her to direct a new project. I saw her leave every morning with a firm step and every night return with new stories. One Friday, while we were eating dinner in Queens, she looked me in the eyes and said, "Dad, I think I want to live alone again. Not because I do not like being with you, but because I need my space, my own place." It surprised me, but I nodded with a smile. That means you are ready. There is no greater sign of freedom than wanting your own roof. On Sunday, we started looking for apartments. We walked through different neighborhoods. Emily got excited seeing balconies, small kitchens, bright bedrooms. "Do you realize?" she told me in one of the visits. "Now I dream of my house, not of maintaining another's." I smiled. "That is the true rebirth, honey." The next hearing was almost anticlimactic. Michael no longer presented a fight. His lawyer asked to negotiate an agreement to avoid more exposure. Patricia, astute, accepted but on clear conditions. Emily would keep the house, receive reimbursement of diverted funds, and remain legally protected from any future claim. The judge agreed. Michael said no word. I saw him shrunk in the chair like a suit without a body. Emily looked at him one last time and said in a low voice, "Goodbye." He did not answer. That night, back in the apartment, Emily opened a bottle of wine and we toasted. To the end, she said, and to the beginning, I added. We looked at each other in silence. I thought of her mother, how proud she would be seeing her strong. And I also thought of myself, a 72-year-old man who had passed from being the invisible grandfather at dinners to being the soldier who held the front. Before sleeping, I opened my notebook and wrote, Stage 6, the sentence arrives. Emily is no longer a victim, nor even a combatant. She is a victor. Michael is an empty man reduced to silence. My daughter rebuilds, I accompany. The war ended, peace begins. I closed the notebook, turned off the light, and smiled. Because at my age one no longer expects great battles. But that had been the most important one, and together my daughter and I had won it. The Monday following the final hearing, the city seemed different. Maybe it was me, maybe it was the way my steps no longer weighed the same. For months I had walked with a chained heart, fearing every call, every date in court, every look from Michael. But now, opening the window of my apartment and seeing the sunrise over the neighborhood, I felt something I had forgotten. Lightness. Emily came out of the bedroom with her hair still damp after showering. She had red eyes, but not from sadness, but from sleeplessness. She had spent the night reviewing apartment options on the internet. "Dad," she told me with an excited voice, "I found one near the park. Small but bright, with a balcony full of plants. I want to go see it." I smiled. I recognized it. That energy was the same she had as a teenager planning to move to the city, to study. A mix of fear and enthusiasm that only appears when one is about to start over. "Let us go," I replied, "today." We arrived at the building in the afternoon. It was old with a brick facade and an old lobby, but the apartment was full of light. Emily walked the living room, touched the walls, opened the balcony window. She looked outside, blooming trees, neighbors, walking dogs, the distant sound of music. "Here I see myself," she whispered. "Cooking, reading, inviting you to dinner. Here I see myself." I looked at her in silence with a knot in my throat. In that instant I understood my daughter had crossed the bridge. She no longer spoke as a victim of divorce. She spoke as a woman, building her home. She signed the lease that same week. The move was simple. Some boxes of books, clothes, a couple of furniture pieces I gave her and her family photos. When we hung her mother's portrait in the living room, Emily stopped a moment, caressed the glass, and said, "Mom would be happy seeing me here, right?" "Of course she would," I replied. "She would be proud of the woman you became." The first days in her new home were a breath of fresh air. We cooked the first dinner together, roast chicken and tomato sauce, her mother's recipe. We lit a candle on the table, and Emily, raising the wine glass, said, "To my independence, and to your recovered dignity," I added. We toasted. While she adapted, Michael sank. Thomas kept sending me reports he had resigned from his firm, Amanda had distanced herself, and the consulting firm was in the red. "What he built with cheating crumbles on top of him," commented Thomas in one of our calls. He does not need to be chased. He is destroying himself alone. I nodded in silence. I did not feel joy. I felt justice. One Friday afternoon, Emily invited me to dinner at her new apartment. She had prepared pot roast, her favorite dish. Sitting down, she told me, "Dad, I feel weird. Happy but weird. After so much pain, is it normal to feel happy? It is more than normal, honey. It is necessary. Happiness is your victory." She smiled and served me more roast. "You know what?" she added. "I am ready to live without fear." Days later, an unexpected episode occurred. I was leaving a bakery when I saw Michael on the street. He was alone, without a tie, with a neglected beard. He recognized me and approached. "Mr. Robinson," he said with a tired voice, "I lost everything. Are you happy?" I looked him in the eyes. I saw in them not arrogance but emptiness. "No, Michael," I replied. "I'm not happy about your fall. I'm happy that my daughter got up." He lowered his head and walked away without saying more. That encounter left me thinking all night. I wrote in my notebook, "Stage 7, the enemy has fallen. But victory is not in his ruin, but in the life Emily rebuilds. My role is not enjoying another's collapse, but accompanying my daughter's rebirth." I closed the notebook with a serenity I had never felt. One Sunday afternoon, Emily and I went to walk in the park. She stopped to watch some kids play soccer and told me, "Dad, I want to tell you something. At work, there is someone, a colleague. He invited me for coffee." I looked at her, surprised, but with joy. "And did you accept?" "Yes. It is just coffee, nothing more. But I accepted because for the first time I am not afraid of making a mistake." I smiled. "That means you have healed." Emily laughed, nervous but happy. Arriving home, I opened my notebook and noted, "My daughter trusts life again. That is the biggest triumph." Michael remained in the past. The future opens in front of us, and I, at my 72 years, am a witness to Emily's rebirth. I stored the notebook and poured myself a drink. Outside, the city continued its incessant noise, but inside me there was a silence full of peace, because I understood that the hardest wars are not won with bullets, but with love, patience, and dignity. And that one, finally, we had won. The last stage of this story did not start in a courtroom, nor in an argument, but on a quiet Sunday morning. I woke up with the smell of sweet bread Emily had bought at the corner, and with the certainty that finally our lives were entering firm ground. The clock marked 8. The sun filtered through the curtains, and the city sounded with its usual bustle, but in me there was a different silence, a silence of peace. Emily appeared in the kitchen with a light smile, one of those that used to be scarce. "Dad," she said, "while serving coffee today, I want to talk to you about something important." I looked at her, curious. "Tell me, honey?" She sat in front of me with her hair loose and serene gaze. "I have been thinking, and I want to rebuild my life, but not only with work or the apartment. I want to open myself to new relationships. I do not want to stay trapped in the idea that everyone is like Michael." I stayed quiet an instant, observing her. I saw in her eyes the shine of someone who trusts the world again. "That is the bravest thing you can do, honey," I replied. "Not everyone is equal, and you deserve someone who sees you with the eyes with which I see your mother, in my memories. With respect, with tenderness, with pride." Emily smiled, and that smile was the proof she had healed enough to take that step. Weeks later, I met him. His name was Daniel, a colleague of hers at the agency. He was different from Michael in everything. He spoke, calmly listened more than he spoke, and greeted me with a firm but respectful handshake. In the first dinner we shared, the three of us, I noticed how he looked at my daughter, not with arrogance, but with genuine admiration. When Emily got up to bring dessert, Daniel leaned toward me and told me, "Mr. Robinson, I know Emily has gone through a lot. I do not want to be her shadow. I want to be her partner." I looked at him fixedly and knew he was serious. "If you respect her and make her smile, you already have my blessing," I replied. Life was resuming its course. Emily dedicated herself fully to her work, and soon they promoted her to project director. Daniel accompanied her not to overshadow her, but to boost her. I saw her shine in every family gathering and every afternoon, coffee and every laugh that no longer sounded broken. Meanwhile, Michael disappeared from our lives. Thomas told me he had moved to another city, looking to start from zero in a small firm. I knew Amanda was no longer with him. I did not rejoice in his misfortune, simply understood that everyone reaps what they sow. A year later, Emily invited me to dinner at her apartment. She received me with a hug and with the table set in a special way. There were candles, flowers, and a warm atmosphere. "Dad," she said while we served roast, "I want to thank you." "Why, honey?" "Because when everything was crumbling, you did not let me fall. You gave me proofs. You gave me strength. You gave me dignity. And now I'm happy." I squeezed her hand with tenderness. That was my duty. Not as a soldier, but as a father. She smiled. And also as a soldier dad. "You taught me to fight with strategy, to not surrender." We toasted with wine. That dinner was more than a meal. It was the celebration of a rebuilt life. Months passed, and Daniel became part of the family. They accompanied me to eat barbecue on Sundays or walk in the park. In one of those walks, Emily told me something that made me stop dead. Dad Daniel proposed. I felt a knot in my throat. "And what did you answer?" "That, yes." I hugged her tight with tears in my eyes. "Then now, yes, honey, your true life begins." The wedding was simple in a garden in the suburbs. There were no luxuries, but there were laughs, hugs, and music. When Emily entered with her white dress, I remembered the first time I took her by the hand, kindergarten. I remembered how I carried her asleep after a kids' party, how she asked me for stories at night, and there she was now starting a new chapter. When she asked me to say a few words, I breathed deep and spoke from the heart. "Honey, I saw you fall, but I also saw you get up. And today I see you stronger than ever. Daniel, take care of that strength, take care of that smile, because I know what it is worth." The guests applauded, and Emily hugged me with tears of gratitude. Note: the source file contained a fragmented story about Ophelia and Zacatecas, pasted here. It appears to be an error as it contradicts the main plot. It is separated below for completeness. I do not remember how I left the house. Maybe I ran, maybe I crawled. When I recovered consciousness, I was in the plaza under the rain, with my cane thrown and my clothes soaked. Ophelia found me there, hugged me crying, and took me back to the inn. We returned to Mexico City the next day. We never spoke again about what happened in the house. The documents, the box, everything remained lost in Zacatecas. But since then I live with a bitter certainty. I will never know who is really the woman sleeping next to me. Ophelia? Eloisa in disguise? Both? Science failed, papers lied, memories mixed. Today, sitting on the terrace of my house in the city, I look at the woman watering the bougainvilleas. She smiles, noticing my gaze, noticing. That smile has accompanied me 50 years. And even so, in the deepest part, doubt remains. Maybe it does not matter anymore. Maybe the only real thing is that I love her, even if I never know her true name. Eloisa's shadow will accompany me until the end. And when my time comes, I will close my eyes and ask no more. Because deep down, after so much confusion, I have understood that truth is not in papers, nor in blood, but in the love that sustains us. Although that love, like my entire life, is made of uncertainty.